Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of this show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
I'm Dr. Scott Lipp, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is The Path to Authenticity, episode 224. And this guy and I go back probably 15 years. Dr. Scott Lipp, who is a therapist and a college professor. But it had been a number of years since we last spoke. Haven't run into him in a really long time. So we had this conversation a few days after catching up, after crossing paths on LinkedIn, as sometimes people do these days. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. Dr. Scott Lipp. Scott, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, it's, we've known each other for a long time. Got a chance to catch up last week after messaging on LinkedIn. And it was really nice to catch up with you. So, this is a great way to sort of reacquaint ourselves and for me to learn about what's going on in your world. I mean, I heard a little bit last week, but why don't you talk to the listener about who you are, what you do?
Yes. So, my journey has brought me to, I guess, where I'm at professionally right now. And that is, I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in New Jersey. And I've been working in the field of mental health for the better part of 11 years. And my current role, I recently started my own practice. It's a hybrid practice, given the nature of things these days, where I have the liberty and, really the pleasure of seeing clients and patients in person as well as online in both states. And so that's my clinical practice. And then I also split my time now as an assistant professor in an online graduate counseling program, part of the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And so I'm have become the scientist practitioner. And that was definitely something that I did not see coming, say, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, if you went back to that time, what did you envision yourself doing back then?
Good question. So going back then, without, I guess, giving my age away too much, but yeah, I was pretty fresh out of college, undergrad, and I had ambitions of becoming a filmmaker.
And you dabbled in that too, right?
I did. I went to NYU. They had a professional filmmaking program, and so I got my education in that. And from there, I was working in TV production, in reality TV, in and about the tri-state area, being New York and New Jersey.
So when you sit down with the client and they ask you, aside from the degrees and all that, what qualifies you to sit here and advise me, what do you tell them?
It's a great question, and definitely one that I think came up more frequently early on, or I should say earlier in my career, because I'm always learning, and I don't consider myself that seasoned of a clinician yet. And that is, so that question was, I've, in my training, it was required to essentially sit on the other side or sit in the other chair. And every graduate counseling program that's accredited these days requires that at least their students seek their own counseling, and they are required to at least attend 10 counseling sessions, professional counseling sessions. So I did that, and I've also had the benefit, in addition to that, doing my own work through therapy and self-growth. And so when often I'm asked that question, I share with them that I've been on the other side. While it may not be your exact situation, I have an understanding of what it means to seek help.
Yeah. Do they usually prod? They want to know more than that?
At times. And that's when, as a professional, it's important to have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And my role as a counselor is to help others help themselves. And I feel when a session takes that direction, the focus is no longer on the work they're there to do, right? It becomes maybe a distraction, maybe something else, but not what they came in for.
Yeah. And, what I was taught about that is that the rule of thumb is to not reveal anything about yourself unless there's a specific therapeutic purpose.
Mm.
And my experience is, depending on the setting, there's some latitude with that.
Mm.
Like if you're working in a residential facility where someone's there for a short period of time, it makes sense to remain pretty rigid about that. But if you're in a setting where people are there for months and months and months, and there's, the relationship endures a little more. It's, it makes sense to, the boundaries are different. And that's something I've had to learn how to navigate over the years, especially working with people, after they leave addiction treatment. But yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of one of the first things you learn, right? Is how to respond to those kinds of questions. And you find a comfortable way to do it. And then it gets easier and becomes less of an issue over time, in my experience anyway.
Absolutely. There's actually, during my doc studies, I did an assignment based on when to disclose and when not to. And you really just summed it up. Essentially, you disclose only when it is in the best interest of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes disclosing can do more harm than good.
Yeah. So what's it like to be sort of coming up in this profession at a time when there's so much talk about the importance of mental health awareness and there is so much, self-disclosure, not necessarily from the professional side, but from the public side is much more normalized, and a lot is being done to try to reduce the stigma. What's that been like for you?
Wow. So, this time things are definitely getting better. The awareness is on the rise, thankfully. It's not where it needs to be, but there's definitely been progress made. So that is relief. Being in the field now and seeing the progress being made. And it's almost like it was catapulted, from the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's remarkable in such a short amount of time, the amount of attention it's gotten, positive attention. But the stigma's still there. It's still real. There's still plenty of individuals who, for a variety of reasons, don't seek the help that, they may need or deserve.
Well, I don't know about you, but I grew up with a dad who, he was a pretty good dad in a lot of ways, but his theory about what he called shrinks is, you have to be crazy to be one. He said a lot of stuff like that. So what about you? What kind of messages around that did you grow up with?
Yeah, I can't say that my dad used those specific words. But I can say that I grew up in an environment, not necessarily in the home, but definitely at school, my town, growing up, playing sports, where, the mentality was boys don't cry. Definitely, reaching out, right? There's weakness there. That was then. Now, obviously, I'm of a different mindset, and I don't know how much I always bought into that even back then. Although that was part of the culture that I grew up in.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, where I grew up in that sort of atmosphere, around that kind of mentality, where there was this perception that to need help, to ask for help, was indicative of weakness. I didn't really buy it, but you got to kind of live in it, right? I mean, as a kid, you sort of acquiesce, and it's really kind of a weird thing. And I think now, I don't know, to me, like, this is the kind of stuff I love to talk about. This is the stuff I get excited about. But I think the positive messages, you hear a lot more frequently now. They're there. But I think, I don't think the entire connection has been made, especially with guys. Like I've written a couple pieces on vulnerability, this whole idea of, how we're told we need to be vulnerable. And for me, I just don't think, I get it. I do it, but that's not really the way to connect with guys. I think most guys, you tell them to be vulnerable, they're going to roll their eyes, even if they understand why it's necessary and they're willing to do it. They still don't like the way it sounds. It still makes you cringe a little bit, right? And that's where I feel like the language that we use with guys, it is really important, because you and I know that when we challenge someone to sort of be in that energy, right, of what some people say is being vulnerable, what we're asking of them is to summon the courage to be real.
Yeah.
To talk about what's really going on, and to talk about how they feel. And, be vulnerable. It literally is a synonym for weak. So we got to find better ways to articulate that with guys, especially, I think. Or else it's just always, the results are always going to kind of be mediocre. We're never going to get through to more guys and overcome these types of stigmas, I believe, anyway.
No, 100%, Tom. One example that comes to mind, all right, of recent, in the NBA, Kevin Love. He's quite open and honest about his struggles, and how he's sought his own help and the benefit from it. But it's one thing to hear it, it's another to experience it.
Yeah, was he diagnosed bipolar? Is that who I'm thinking of?
I'm not positive on his diagnosis. I just know he's a huge mental health advocate, just based on his own struggles. I know that it came out of, he's quite open and honest about having a panic attack on the court.
Mm.
And I think that's what led him to seeking help. And now he's, a major advocate, along with, Michael Phelps.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I can very well see and how there's other, men, or not just men, anyone, men, women, hearing those messages and still not buying into it, or maybe telling themselves, my problems aren't that bad, or, it's a bunch of garbage.
Well, I think the risk is really, are people going to treat me differently?
Yeah.
And the reality is some people probably will.
Right.
And for me, how I've learned to deal with that kind of stuff personally is that's who I know are either my people or not my people, right? If they're going to be judgy because of something like that, then I know they're not my people.
That's it.
But, as somebody who, at this point, I'm pretty open about my recovery and all that stuff. But man, it's a hell of a lot easier to do that with some substantial time behind me and a career than it would have been a few years in. And let alone under the spotlight, and, playing a professional sport where, the camera's on you multiple times a week for hours at a time. Like, that would be hard.
Yeah.
That would be hard. So, yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do that. But I think the more people who are willing to do that, the people who are the ones who are likely to judge you for that sort of thing, they're, I feel like, becoming more and more scarce as time goes on. It's going to take a while for all that to filter out, but I feel like it will eventually, I think there may be more of them than us now, but there won't always be. Right?
I like that.
Yeah. So what's on the horizon for you? Any big goals? You planning on writing a book, or what? You have a doctorate now. Like, what's the next objective for you?
It's a great question. Because it's helpful just not just professionally but personally to I guess have those 5-year, 10-year like timelines, goals, right? And so the doctorate, the dissertation, after that kind of sidelined my writing. I'm still probably recovering from it, but yeah, the plan is to do a little more publishing. Definitely. I would say that's a professional goal in the near term. Also, to pursue a supervision credential.
Okay.
Because I love the clinical work, but now with a little more experience under my belt and the faculty position, I would like to broaden that and, supervise, counselors in training.
So tell me about your practice. You have a practice of your own, and that's been open a while now?
A little over a year now, so still pretty young.
And are you looking to grow there or bring other people in?
That is a goal, but I would not say it's a hard and fast one. It's something that I'm actually kind of developing. Right now it's my practice. I'm the sole and lead clinician, but I would like to expand it and perhaps turn it into a group practice. And having that supervision credential would probably open that door. You know, I got into this field, you know, quite often you get asked the question, like, why, right?
Mm-hmm. What's your answer to that question?
It's so simple. It's, you know, to help others help themselves. At one point, I think it was to help others. And that's great, but I see it more as bringing about, you know, each and every individual's natural healing capacities within themselves. Because everyone has it. And in essence, that's it, you know, and I believe that because I have experienced it, you know, in my own life. And sometimes it's kind of like an ebb and flow. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. And sometimes you need someone to remind you of that.
Yeah. But, you know, I hear you that you decided to go this direction because you wanted to help people help themselves. But there's something about you that sort of steers you in that direction, right? Like, not everybody, a lot of us want to help people or help people help themselves, but we don't decide to make a career out of it, right? I mean, that's, I think personality wise, there's something there too, right? I mean, like for me, even though, you know, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, on some level, I knew I wanted to help people somehow, right? Can you relate to that? Like, even as a kid or young adult?
What led me down this path?
Well, I mean, like to me, there's just, I think it's kind of written on my heart.
Mm-hmm.
That I want to help people. And, you know, I think it's the same part of me that really loves kids. And although I'm not a teacher, I think I'm naturally a teacher in certain ways. You know, I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm somebody who, you know, fell into a career, you know, because of my story of addiction, and because I wanted to do stuff like this, I wanted to write and I wanted to do, you know, more media related stuff. I tried to get out of it a couple years into it. Like I did my best. Like I jumped ship from a really good job at a great facility and took a job at a little publishing house in West Palm Beach. And that kind of fell apart. And, you know, I was kind of determined not to work in the helping profession. And if I did, it was going to be working in prevention with kids. And then what happened is, every job opportunity that presented itself that was any good was working in addiction. And that's when I found myself working in Delray Beach, and, you know, that's how I ended up there. So, and at that point I just kind of decided, okay, you know, so I looked to the sky. All right, I'm going to stop, fighting it right now. And once I let go of that, you know, things worked out pretty well. You know, but still, even, you know, as a kid in high school, I remember not knowing what kind of career path I wanted to take and not being really clear about what I wanted to do, but kind of knowing that I wanted to do good in the world, you know? So I don't know. I just I know you well enough to know that you're kind and caring and patient and considerate. And, you know, I mean, there are a lot of ways you could have gone if you wanted to, right? You're a smart guy. You could have done a lot of stuff.
No, I appreciate that.
It's true, man. Come on. You have a doctorate. You didn't have to do it in psychology.
No, you're definitely having me reflect on something that I haven't in a while. But I think, a lot of these qualities that I utilize professionally are something that individuals like us, we take for granted. You know, it's innate, you know, it's in us, whether it's through our early childhood development, environment, or a combination. I think there definitely is something for any individual that gets into the helping professions.
Hmm.
And for those that do head down that path, and they get a taste of it, and you know what it's like to help another, help, you know, a family, whatever it may be. It's really, you know, that's the reward. And it's kind of like a selfish act, essentially.
Hmm.
You know, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you say that because that's true. You know, there is a selfish element. It's, you know, it's good for you, right? To do this. But it's not selfish in the sense that, you know, most selfish acts, it doesn't feel the way a selfish act typically feels, right? It feels pure.
Mm.
I mean, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine if you're doing it because, you know, you have zero ego strength and you know, you can't esteem yourself, so you have to get that from outside of yourself, then, you know, then that's a compulsion, right? That's a whole different thing.
Mm.
But, you know, there's, you know, the whole idea that it's okay to help ourselves. It's okay to think of ourselves and act toward our own ends if we're doing it to help other people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If I need to, you know, I need to make a salary, I need to be able to pay my bills, I need to, you know, make ends meet to keep it going, to keep helping more, to keep, you know what I mean? So, you know, there's nothing wrong with any of that, you know? Yeah, but it can be tough too. It can be, you know, you and I, when we talked last week, had a chance to talk about some of the not so great experiences that come up sometimes doing this kind of work, right?
Oh, yeah.
Some of the ugliness. So what's the profile of the client that you really love to work with? What's your favorite?
You know, currently, and I can honestly say, I feel like, you know, it depends on, because I've experienced, you know, working with a variety of clients, populations, and right now it's the worried well, right? Your everyday individual, which seems like has gotten a lot of attention, again, given the pandemic, of just how many individuals out there going about their lives, you know, part of the struggle, right? Just grappling with stress, anxiety, whether it be financially or, emotionally, um, dealing with your everyday worries. Those are the folks that I really do like working with. And the issues that I enjoy working with. And I feel like that population was not there a few years ago because of going back to the stigma. A lot of people up until recently didn't see these problems as being, that they didn't qualify to seek therapy.
Or I think a lot of times is this really something I want to pay someone to help me with?
That's true too.
Yeah. Right. There's gotta, this isn't something you pay people to help you with, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I imagine that my assumption listening to you is that client who, is struggling in certain areas of their life, has psychosocial stressors, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're coming to you and they actually want help, that's the other thing. When they come to you and they're asking for help, that's a lot different than somebody being compelled to seek help, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my guess is it kind of reminds me of the satisfaction that I got back in my carpentry days, because you go to a job site, at the end of the day, there's a few walls that are there that weren't there in the morning, and you can see the work that you did when you leave at the end of the day. And a client like that, it's apparent that their quality of life has improved if they follow the advice, right?
Yeah.
Where on the other hand, if it's somebody who's kind of a train wreck, maybe they're less of a train wreck, but they're still, you know what I mean? It's just different. I could see where that would be, it'd be gratifying.
You're 100% spot on. But you're making me think, well, so I've, first started out in the field working, solely in addictions and substance related and addictive disorders, and talking about seeing that progress. I mean, that population, it's kind of like, a high risk, high reward.
Well, and you got to stick around a while if you're going to see some progress. I mean, you got to be around a while.
Yeah. But when you do see it, it's amazing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, people change the course of their lives.
Yeah.
I'm an entirely different person than I would have been otherwise.
Right.
Blows me away to think about it. I had lunch with a guy last week who was a sports editor for the local newspaper in the town where I grew up for many, many years. And before I got sober, I wrote for him. I covered high school sports, and I was kind of doing that on the weekends. And I went off the rails and, missed a couple assignments and, always talked to him about it and stuff like that. But he had a front row seat, and was one of those guys who really believed in me, and showed it. He believed that I could get better and wanted me to get better and all that. And, 25 years later, he's still in my life. But, yeah, the point of view, his point of view, it's just really interesting to me to think about who I was back then. And for him to see me now and talk to me and ask me questions, and, he's asking me to reflect on my experience and asking questions about what it was like. I mean, it's just, it's got to be really cool to see for somebody else, Yeah. And it's, and you and I talked about some guys that I've known over the years that I had the opportunity to see celebrate, years. I mean, I have family members, my best friend in the world, I was able to help, and he's sober like 12 years now, which is just, I never thought, I could have never imagined watching something like that take place, but it is, it's remarkable. It's a gift to just be able to do it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say more writing, are you talking about academic writing? Do you see yourself writing a book?
I would say right now, a book, like a literary or non-academic book, is more of a dream.
Okay.
I can say I would like to, but I don't have any plans on it. Right now, there's a few academic articles in the works, but that's a different kind of writing. That's it can be fun, but it's more labor than I would say other types of work.
Is there somebody out there whose work you admire a lot that?
In terms of what type of?
Like the direction where you want to go in your career. Like right now, a lot of people talk about Gabor Mate. He comes up a lot.
Mm.
I just wonder if there's anybody like that.
Honestly, nothing off the top of my head. Well, there's authors I admire. No one that I can really say that I would want to say model any work that I do, any work I do.
So what about personally? What do you see for yourself? What do you want?
It's a good question. So, professionally, things are definitely in order. They're moving in the right direction. A lot of things that I've lined up. Personally, it would be nice to, I guess, settle down, right? You've got a kid.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Maybe
so you want to be a dad, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You'd be a great dad.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I would, I'd love to have that opportunity.
Well, you will. So I don't know, for me, like being in this world, it's like, just requires layer after layer after layer of personal growth. Right?
Mm.
Have you found that?
How so?
Well, I guess when we get onto the topic of relationships, like for me to be able to like be in a really healthy and gratifying relationship that was, mutually beneficial and all that stuff, like I had to work through some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And before I could work through it, I had to like realize it was going on.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time. Like when you and I met, I mean, my life was a whole lot different.
Yeah.
Like I was married with an infant son and 2 stepdaughters and living that life. And, did my best to do that and tried everything I possibly could to make that work and to fit into that, life. And it just didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And then, which was, once I accepted it, it was freeing yet also devastating. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there was mourning. I mean, really, it wasn't mourning the marriage as much as it was mourning the dream, right? The idea in my head of what my life was going to play out like. That, I'm not going to be the dad who, lives happily ever after with the kids and all that. It just was going to be different than that. And that was devastating. To recognize my life was never going to look like the way I thought it was going to look. But, once I accepted that and started to like really work on the stuff that was coming up, definitely through the end of the marriage, into the next relationship, and then after the next relationship is when the real big healing started to take place for me. But yeah, I mean, it's like this, we go through stuff in life and it, it's like, for me, these, wounds, are revealed to me. But the thing is that my eyes are open. I'm intentional about looking for the things that I need to heal and that I need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But it never ends, and also it's like, to me, what I've learned is the bigger the stuff that we go through, the more healing comes from it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, when we talk about, like, when I hear you say, I would like to be able to have that, like, I know you can have, like, you're a great dude. You're a good looking guy. You're super smart. You'd make a great dad. Like, it's going to happen for you. So it just makes me wonder, like, what is it that, maybe there's something you got to heal first. Maybe that's why it hasn't happened yet.
You're making a good point.
I'm not asking you to speculate as to what that might be or anything, but that's what I thought about when you said that, because it's gonna happen,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that's kind of really comforting the older I get is, we can freak out about stuff all we want. We can worry all we want. Things are going to work out. Right? I mean, things tend to work out, whether we freak out or not.
It'd be nice if we didn't have to, though.
Yeah. Well, All right, man. So, looking back on your life, going back to the younger Scott, when was the time when he was at a low point, really struggling, needed support? When would that have been, and what would you go back and say to him?
Jeez. I've had, well, look, I mean, I got into this field for a reason. I've had many of those moments. From the time, oh, jeez, I was, a kid, like, we're going back to kindergarten, right? All the way up until now. I've had those moments, and talking about freaking out, right? And I would like to have told myself, you are where you are. This is part of the journey. And just be.
Just be.
Yeah, don't run away. Don't try not to feel. Just be.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? I feel like, I believe that most of us try to avoid our emotional experience a lot. And what I personally believe is that the more collectively we stop doing that, the better off we're all going to be. Well, it's been great, man. It's great catching up with you.
It's been awesome.
Thanks for listening to the show. Please subscribe, leave a rating or a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can learn more about my other podcasts by visiting thepathtooauthenticity.com or by clicking the link in the show notes. Music is by the band Punk Rock Opera, used under a Creative Commons license and with permission from the artist. The show is produced by me, Tom Gentry. You can find more of my work on Substack, including a podcast only available to paid subscribers. So again, thanks for listening. Keep coming back.